This video is going to be on my favorite note-taking softwares to use when studying. Welcome to part 3 of our How to Study series. In part 1, we talked about setting up a study space and a study schedule. In part 2, we talked about selecting the right computer hardware for studying. In this video, we're going to be talking specifically about what softwares I use for study success. One of the recurring themes that you'll notice in my videos is one of simplicity. I think it's really important to have a simple setup so that you're focused more on your studying than your setup. You don't want to have a software or a computer that's crashing or that's buggy or that annoys you or that just simply doesn't work. So in this video, I'm going to try to cover the easiest software tips and tricks that I use personally on a day-to-day basis to make your studying as simple as possible so that you can focus on actually obtaining the information instead of trying to set up your software. A lot of times when people are starting off, they decide to save all of their notes on Microsoft Word. And they save their documents on the desktop, and they save their PowerPoint slides on their desktop or somewhere else on their hard drive. And today I'm going to show you guys what I think is a much better and simpler way for you to retain that information and keep those notes as your professional tools moving forward in your career. As a side note, I just want to mention that most schools have a free availability to Microsoft Office. So if you're going to be attending a university or college soon, instead of buying Microsoft Office, you should first check if they offer it for free at your school. I want to take you guys back a few years, maybe to middle school, which for me was 10 years ago. There was always a kid who had a binder, and it was usually a really thick binder, and he used to organize all of his classes, all of his papers, all of his handouts in that binder. And maybe he even had different binders for different days, and that kid was just super organized. I want to introduce you guys to softwares that I think of as digital binders. And many of you have probably heard of these as note-taking applications, but to me, they're more about organizing your files and your notes and your PowerPoints than they are about note-taking. So the concept of the digital binder is that you can insert all of your notes, all of your PowerPoints, all of your PDFs, all your handouts into one file management system. And you can organize that by classes, by terms, by semesters, by years. And that way you have all of your notes available to you, and usually these software systems also back up to the cloud, so you have access to them even if you're on a different computer, even if you have a new device, even if you lose your computer, you still have access to all of your notes. But to me, the single most important feature behind using a digital binder software is the ability to search through all of your notes at one time. And this is true of pretty much all the softwares. You can search one word and you can look through all of your notes from the previous years to find that one slide that you're thinking of that's left in the back of your mind.
This is Evernote, which is a digital binder software that I like using. So just a quick example, I'm reading about amino acids when I'm studying for my MCAT. And what I can do is I can click on search notes, and then I can go to amino acid. And then it'll pull up every single lecture that I've ever had with amino acids. And even within the lecture, I can actually go and see all the different slides that have to do with amino acids. And based on that, I can review something that there could be a slide that I just really liked from my undergrad, and that's just coming up in the back of my mind. And it really helps when you're reviewing for board exams, whether it's the MCAT, whether it's the National Boards of Medicine or Dentistry or PA school. I think it's something that's really useful to use when you're reviewing for board exams.
And this goes back to the idea of thinking of your notes as professional tools. They're going to be things that you refer back to all throughout your career, especially if you're in professional school right now, whether you're in PA school, whether you're in medical school or dental school, you're going to be referring back to these notes for many, many years in the upcoming future. You want to have the ability to easily access and review your notes, so in the future, when you have a patient in the chair, when you have something that you really want to check, you have the ability to do so really quickly. If you're in college or undergrad, one of the really useful ways to utilize this system is when you're taking your MCAT, or you're taking the DAT, or you're taking the GRE, or the LSAT, or any other examination, you have the ability to search through all of your notes at one time. So whether you're doing study questions, you're reviewing a concept, or you're trying to remember something, there's going to be one slide that you remember for 2 or 3 years ago from freshman physics, and you just can't remember where it is. And even if you've saved all of your PowerPoints on your desktop from freshman year, searching through each and every one of them is a huge hassle. So instead what you can do is you can go through your digital binder software and you can just search the word thermodynamics, and you'll find the exact slide that you were looking for, because every single slide that has the word thermodynamics will show up in your search results. There are tons of different softwares on the market, but I would say that there are 3 most popular digital binder softwares that you can use. And the first one would be Evernote, which is what I just showed you guys, and the second would be OneNote, and the third would be Notability. So for simplicity's sake, I think that if you have a Mac and your primary machine is a Mac, you should get Evernote. If your primary machine is a Windows computer, desktop, or laptop, you should get OneNote, and if your primary machine is an iPad, you should get Notability. That being said, you can definitely mess around with all three and see which one that you like the most. So the cheapest one is going to be OneNote, which currently is free, and it only costs $2 a month for 100 gigabytes of online storage. I believe up to 5 gigabytes of storage is free. Notability is $10 on the App Store currently for iPad. So Evernote is actually the most expensive of all three. There's 3 tiers. The first one is free, and the second one is Evernote Plus, which is $4 a month, and the third one is Evernote Premium, which is $8 a month. The main difference is simply in the amount of storage that you have for your notes. That being said, I think even $8 a month is really not something that's breaking the bank. You should think of it as an investment in your education and a professional tool that you're going to be using. And I can definitely tell you guys that having access to all of your notes at once and being able to search them up has saved me so many times, and it's a very, very useful thing to be using. So you guys can definitely check out all three and see which one that you like the most and stick with that one. The next thing I want to mention is actually about your software format. So in college classes, especially in science classes and graduate school classes, you often get PowerPoint and you get Word documents that are handed out to you online. And that could be via Blackboard or the system that your school uses. I like converting every single document that I get to PDF. And once I convert it to PDF, I then upload it into Evernote, at which point I can edit it. So I don't actually use Evernote itself as a note-taking software. Instead, what I do is I actually write very minimal notes, and I'll talk about that more in my next video, but whatever notes I do write, I actually write directly on the document. And I use that using a PDF viewer. My personal favorite PDF viewer is actually Mac's default PDF viewer, Preview.
So you can see I have the PowerPoint lecture downloaded from my online platform. So what I do is I click on File, and then I go and Save As, and I convert every single document to PDF. So I'll just save that in my downloads, and then I'll click Export, and it converts it into a PDF. Then I exit out of that, and then I go to Evernote, and I click plus, and I add a new file, and I just drag and drop this PDF into Evernote. Then what I do is I actually do not use Evernote to take notes on this lecture, but instead I double click on here. Preview is just a lot more simple to use. There's a lot less menus, there's a lot less extra buttons, and when I'm writing notes, it's a lot easier to see what I'm writing versus what the lecturer has written. So probably my favorite tool to use is just this highlighter tool, and it's so simple to use. You can just click right here for highlight, and then you just go and scroll through and it highlights words for you. And then when you want to write a note, you just click on text box here, and you can just type whatever you want. And you can change the size, and you can change the font and the color of the text, and you can set these as defaults, which work all throughout the entire PowerPoint, and you can just type things and move the text box wherever you like.
The other alternative PDF viewer that's really popular to use for Windows is going to be Adobe Acrobat. It doesn't have exactly the same features, but on Windows that would be the one that I would use. And then if you're an iPad, I would strongly recommend that you use Notability. The next software that I really like using and that really helps you retain information long-term in your long-term memory is going to be Anki. Anki is a flashcard app. There is a little bit of nuance to getting used to how to use it, but once you learn how to use it properly and you master the keyboard shortcuts and all the different tips and tricks that go into making a flashcard, I think it's something that can really change your study game and help you really retain that information for many, many years to come in the future.
You can see I have a lot of different flashcard decks. I've used this application for almost every single class in dental school and for every board exam that I've ever studied for. So I think this is a super useful application. There's also a ton of flashcard decks that have been uploaded by other students online that you can utilize. We'll go to this deck over here, click Study Now, and this is the question that we get for our flashcard. And then we can click Show Answer, and you can see that there's 3 different buttons that show up. So you can actually set the intervals of this differently, but the way it works is if you don't really know the question, you just click again, and it'll show you that question again in a minute. And then if you do know the question a little bit, but you still want to review it again that same day, you can click on Good. And then if you feel like you really know the question really well, then you can click Easy, and the algorithm is built in a way that it'll show you that flashcard again when you're about to forget it. And that's really the coolest part about Anki, is that there's the built-in algorithm that reminds you of those questions when you are about to forget them. And then when you're trying to put in a flashcard, it's really simple. You can just type your front of your flashcard here, name the 3 branch chain amino acids. And then we know it's leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And then we have a flashcard there, and then we can just click add.
If you don't like the formatting for Anki, you can also use Quizlet, and you can also use MemRank. And those are the 3 most popular flashcard apps. But I think making flashcards is definitely essential for your long science classes that you have to really memorize a lot of information. The next software that I wanted to talk about is actually a video and audio player. My personal recommendation is that you actually download every single lecture that you have onto your computer, and you should play it using VLC Player.
So you guys can see I have my lecture downloaded as an MP4 file already, and I just double click on it and it opens up in VLC, which is my default player. And you can
Hello
see
again,
that
everyone.
it started playing. I think that the best feature that is available only on VLC as far as I know is the ability to control the speed by 0.1. So you want to have the ability to fast forward and make your lectures faster depending on the lecturer. And maybe when you're starting out, 1.5 will seem really fast, but eventually you'll be able to build yourself up to 2.6, 2.7 maybe. The thing is that each lecture that you'll have will have a slightly different speaking speed. So you want to have the ability to control exactly how quickly you want the video going. And that is really the key to VLC. You're able to control how quickly the speed of the video goes at a much smaller increment than most other video players. In most other video players, you're either at 1, or you're at 1.5 or 2, but here you can actually go to 1.63.
And hopefully once COVID is over and we're back to real life classes, if your school doesn't actually offer recordings or video recordings of your lectures, I would strongly recommend that you sit in the front of your class and actually take your iPhone and use the voice memos to record the actual audio of what the instructor is saying. Just to recap everything we talked about, the first thing is using a digital binder software, and the 3 recommendations that I had was Evernote if you're a Mac user, OneNote if you're a Windows user, and Notability if you are an iPad user. And the next software we talked about was using a proper PDF viewer, and that would be Preview if you're a Mac user, that would be Adobe Acrobat if you're a Windows user, and Notability if you are an iPad user. The next software was a flashcard app, and that could be Anki, or it could be MemRank or Quizlet. And the last software that I strongly recommend, and it's actually available on all platforms, is the VLC Player. And if you guys have any other softwares that you recommend or that you use on a daily basis, feel free to comment them down below. And thank you for watching.